Let's talk about Elon Musk's recent trouble in Washington and his high-profile departure. This is quite interesting. Yahoo Finance and the New York Times and other media have reported it in detail. Let's combine this information and sort it out. Musk's Washington experiment, high-profile entry, controversial ending. Speaking of Elon Musk, the big boss of Tesla and SpaceX, some time ago, as a special government employee, at the invitation of President Trump, led a newly established department called the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Just by listening to the name, you can tell that the goal is very ambitious, to slim down, improve efficiency, and save money for the huge federal government. Musk boasted that he would cut at least $1 trillion or even $2 trillion from the government's annual budget. This battle is a bit like he wants to use the subversive energy of building rockets and electric cars to transform Washington. However, according to reports from the New York Times and Yahoo Finance, this Washington experiment did not seem to achieve the amazing goals originally set after about 4 months, about 130 days, which is also the statutory service limit for special government employees. President Trump held a formal farewell ceremony for Musk in the Oval Office on May 30, 2025. Although Trump praised Musk as one of the greatest business leaders and innovators the world has ever seen, and said that Musk would continue to advise the government on cost cuts as a consultant, the actual, slimming, result seemed a bit skinny. The New York Times made it clear that Musk was far from achieving his goal of cutting $1 trillion from the federal budget. Yahoo Finance also mentioned that the effort achieved little. A real-time government spending tracker from the Brookings Institution even shows that overall government spending in the 2025 calendar year is actually slightly higher than the 2024 level, although DOGE's layoffs and project cuts can be clearly seen in some agencies, such as the United States Agency for International Development USAID. Musk's team has reportedly exaggerated its cost-saving efforts many times, but it is undeniable that large-scale layoffs and project cuts have indeed had a profound impact on some departments. At his farewell meeting, Trump also listed some projects that DOGE found and planned to cut, such as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion (DEI) project funded by the Department of Education and Housing for Immigrants in New York City, which seemed to cater to conservative tastes. Musk himself was quite emotional about this experience. He once boasted about how easy it was to save billions of dollars in an hour, but also complained to the Washington Post about the criticism and opposition caused by his cost-cutting projects, saying that DOGE has simply become a scapegoat for everything. Regarding the obstacles that failed to make drastic reforms, he said that sorting out the huge expenditures of the federal government is really a heavy task, and it is not a problem of one person. Musk's time in Washington and his relationship with President Trump and his government can be said to be quite complicated and delicate. On the one hand, the two sides showed a high degree of honeymoon period. Musk invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Trump's election campaign and quickly integrated into Trump's inner circle, riding Air Force One with the president, participating in meetings with foreign leaders, and accepting joint interviews. Trump also gave him great autonomy to make great strides in his position at DOGE. At the farewell ceremony, Trump praised Musk, saying that Musk's contribution to the United States is unparalleled in modern history, and presented him with a gold key engraved with the White House emblem. Musk also returned the favor, praising the president for making the Oval Office finally have the majesty it deserves, referring to the new golden decorations in the office. But on the other hand, friction and disagreement also follow. The New York Times pointed out that Musk has a tense relationship with members of Trump's cabinet and other senior White House advisors, and often disputes over spending and personnel appointments. His style of using his social platform X to attack critics also scares many people in Washington. What's more, he once tried to obtain a sensitive briefing on China at the Pentagon, which the president himself learned about through a report in the New York Times, which undoubtedly angered some officials, including Trump. The most interesting thing is that Musk even publicly sang opposition to Trump on some key issues. Shortly before he left office, he expressed disappointment with a big, beautiful bill that Trump pushed. Yahoo Finance mentioned that Musk pointed out in an interview with CBS that if the bill passes, it may generate a new deficit of more than $3 trillion, which increases the budget deficit, and weakens the work that the DOGE team is doing. This is in stark contrast to Trump and his senior advisor Stephen Miller's claim that the bill will reduce the deficit. At the farewell meeting on Friday, when Trump again claimed that the bill would cut the deficit, Musk stood aside in silence, and the scene was quite intriguing. In addition, he has also complained about Trump's policy of imposing comprehensive tariffs on major trading partners. Musk made it clear at the farewell meeting that he will now devote more energy to his business empire, including Tesla, TSLA, SpaceX, and artificial intelligence company xAI. He posted on the X platform that he would return to the workplace 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sleep in the conference room/server/factory, and emphasized that he must focus highly on xAI and Tesla, and the Starship launch next week, because we have key technologies coming soon. Tesla itself is also preparing for the key driverless taxi, robotaxi, trial in Austin starting at the end of July. Its dedicated driverless taxi Cybercab is scheduled to be launched in 2026, and the much-anticipated more affordable electric vehicle is also expected to debut in the first half of this year. He also seems to have reflected on the excessive energy invested in politics in the past period of time. He once told Bloomberg that he would reduce political spending in the future, saying, "I think I have done enough," and also admitted to Ars Technica, "I think I may have spent too much time on politics." Although Musk claimed that DOGE's mission, to improve government efficiency, will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life throughout the government, and said he would continue to advise the president as a friend and advisor, his chapter in Washington ended with a bit of embarrassment and unfinished ambitions. The New York Times described him as reputation damaged and with a veritable black eye, which Musk himself explained was beaten by his 5-year-old son. The controversy surrounding Musk has not subsided with his departure. He once again avoided questions about the New York Times accusation that he abused drugs while campaigning for Trump and criticized the newspaper's Pulitzer Prize for its coverage of Trump's relationship with Russia. In addition, he told Trump's advisors this year that he planned to donate $100 million to political groups controlled by the presidential team before the 2026 midterm elections, but according to people familiar with the matter, as of this week, the funds have not yet arrived. My comments. In my opinion, Elon Musk's DOGE journey in Washington is more like a personal and topical performance art and political experiment, rather than a traditional government reform. Since there is already a feud between the New York Times and Musk is strongly dissatisfied with the New York Times report on his frequent use of ketamine, we filter out some subjective words when reading this report. Then, we must admit that Musk's extraordinary ability as a business wizard and innovator is rare in human history. He is a genius who can integrate scientists and entrepreneurs and has made an indispensable contribution to the improvement of the quality of human life. He dares to challenge traditions and pursues extreme efficiency. This spirit itself is worthy of recognition. His entry into DOGE as an idealist and a political rookie has undoubtedly brought a catfish effect to the dull bureaucratic system, forcing some institutions to re-examine their own operations. Some of the cuts listed by the Trump administration, such as spending on DEI or immigrant housing, do touch on some issues that conservatives have long been concerned about. From this perspective, he has not achieved nothing. At least he has promoted changes at some points or exposed problems. However, the complexity of government operations far exceeds business management. It is not only about efficiency and cost, but also involves many aspects such as law, politics, public services, and the balance of multiple interests. Musk tried to use the first principles, fast iteration, and destruction before establishment methodology of running a business, especially a high-tech startup, to drastically reform the federal government. His original intention may be good, but he obviously underestimated the resistance and difficulty. The so-called trillion-dollar reduction grand goal was ultimately not achieved, which in turn illustrates this point. The criticism and opposition he encountered, as well as his complaints about DOGE as a scapegoat, also reflect the huge gap between idealism and political reality. The interaction between Musk and the Trump administration, which is sometimes close and sometimes disruptive, is also quite intriguing. This not only reflects Musk's true personality of being independent, but may also reflect his strategy of trying to find a balance between political influence and business interests. For example, he supports the president in public, but expresses different opinions in private or on specific issues. He promises to make political donations, but also emphasizes returning the focus to the business. This complexity makes it difficult for the outside world to simply categorize him. The New York Times mentioned that he might obtain favorable personnel arrangements for his SpaceX company, such as leadership of NASA and the Air Force, through government service. If this is true, it will undoubtedly arouse public doubts about his use of public office for commercial interests. This reminds us that even reforms in the name of efficiency and public interest need to be vigilant against the personal or corporate agenda behind them. But Trump did not use Musk's recommended candidates to enter NASA, which protected Musk from another perspective. Overall, Musk's 4 months in Washington are more like a collision experiment of personal influence, business logic and political system. It may not have subverted Washington as expected, but it undoubtedly left a deep mark in many topics worth pondering: the role of the super-rich in politics, the path to improve government efficiency, the boundary between business logic and public management, and how the spirit of innovation, personal ambition and public responsibility are intertwined in such a controversial figure. He left in a high-profile manner, but the waves he set off in Washington will probably continue for some time. As an engineer, the place where he can best demonstrate his own value is the factory, not Washington. I appreciate Musk's stop-loss in political exploration. I think of a passage from Tao Yuanming's Returning to the Countryside: I understand that the past cannot be changed, and I know that the future can be pursued. In fact, I am not far from the wrong path, and I realize that today is right and yesterday is wrong. Finally, I wish Musk to realize his wish to go to Mars as soon as possible. The above is some information and personal views shared with you today. Thank you for your company.